So you're scrolling social media and you saw that somebody recommended that during your student teaching, you should have your students fill out student recommendation letters. And you're wondering if it's going to be worth your time. Well, today I'm going to be diving into why I personally don't use student recommendation letters during the interview process and what I recommend doing instead. So, with that being said, let's dive in.
Hey, teacher bestie. My name's Helena, and I'm the creator of the Present Teacher Podcast. I'm a first year teacher coach, and in this podcast, you are going to learn everything from simple, actionable classroom management, social emotional learning, and teacher wellness strategies. You know that impact you want to make in the classroom? Well, we're going to make it happen here.
Now, you might be wondering, why don't I use student letter recommendations anymore? And the truth is, when I first started, this was all the rage and trending when I completed my master's in elementary education. I scrolled social media, it was Instagram at the time, and I saw that there was a creator out there that said, to stand out from other teachers, you should take some time to pass out student letters of recommendations out to your students so they can tell the admin what they liked about you. And so I took the time, I went on TPT, I purchased the student recommendation letters that was trending. I handed them out to my kids, and then when I put them in my portfolio for teaching, what I quickly realized was during the interview, they didn't actually look at them. And that's when I realized that a lot of the things that I saw online that helped you stand out from others weren't actually true, and it wasn't always applicable. Districts were so used to it now that they didn't actually feel invested or want to read into them. And honestly, during the interview, oftentimes these teachers and these admins that are joining the hiring committees are taking time out of their day and may have a sub or two or even split up their class between teachers so they can be a part of your interview. So the last thing I want to do is have the time to go through your letters in the moment and take that precious time when instead they could be getting to know you a little bit more. So that's why whenever I have a new teacher or a teacher reach out and ask if I recommend using student letters of recommendations, I let them know that I personally do not. Now, what I ended up doing on the flip side is I do have my students create a card for me, or just like what they would like me to know about them or something like that. That way I can still remember them as time goes on, and I can enjoy that experience, but I don't use that as a way to help me get a job now. So, with that being said, now that we talked about why I don't personally use student letters of recommendation, let's talk about what I use instead. Here are some things that I have not only used in the two times that I've applied at districts and got hired during my interviews, but also as something I've seen as someone who's been a part of the hiring committee. The first one is student data. So, the first thing that I recommend using is what I call student data. So, instead of using just general well wishes of my students, I like to actually look at the data and look at where they were when I started working with them and where they were at the end. So, what I like to do, especially if I just finished student teaching, I like to look at where my students were before, whether that was their I reading, their I station, whether that was their math facts, whether that was their facts fluency, whether that was how many letters they had for letter identification, phonemic awareness, anything like that. And I like to look at where they were after I worked with them and what I did in the middle. Now, I don't need to remember the data of every single student, but if there's some students who stand out more than others and I worked really well with that student, I'll take note of those stats and I'll look at them and think, how can I incorporate this data into an interview answer later during my interview? This could be talk about a time that you helped a student overcome something, or talk about a time that you had to overcome something. And I could talk about how I didn't particularly know how to go about helping a particular student. I researched it. Here's where they were before, and here's how they were now. And if I go as far as to create a student or a teacher portfolio, you can technically just talk briefly about some of the data you've seen in regards to how your students have grown. I wouldn't highly don't recommend putting their name or anything like that, but just a generalized way of going about their data and the growth you've seen. So that's the first thing I recommend doing instead of letters of recommendations from your students is to use their data and incorporate it into your interview question answers to show that not only are you credible academically, if that's your case, but you also have seen growth in the past. And it's a natural way to bring it about in conversation. The second thing I recommend instead of using student letters of recommendation is student stories. Think of particular stories where you had to overcome classroom management. Maybe you had a student who is partaking in disruptive behavior and you had to redirect them or help them acquire a new skill other than to disrupt the class to reach the need or want that they desired. Think of stories like that where you help students overcome things. And what I actually like to do before an interview is I like to have about 5 to 10 stories on hand that I know I can use later. Like I said, some of this could be a time that a student was disruptive, a time that I had to work well with families, a time I had to overcome technology, but coming up with a bank of stories that I can use later throughout my interview is going to help it seem natural and it's going to help you be memorable. When you're talking to somebody, a great way to remember who they are is when you connect with their stories because it makes them unique and different from others. So, by naturally incorporating stories, now keeping them brief, not going on and on about them, but incorporating them into your interview question answers can really help you stand out and help explain more answers more thoroughly with specific details and examples. The third area that I recommend doing instead of using student letters of recommendation is utilizing your it factor. Now, I've talked about this in depth in previous weeks, but essentially, your it factor is what makes you stand out from other teachers. What makes you different? What makes the district want to hire you over somebody else? Now, we talked about this in the past, but your it factor, a great way to come up with your it factor is to come up with your biggest quote unquote weakness and turning it into the reason why districts should hire you. So I tell this story. Again, I'm going to go briefly over this because I've talked about it in depth in a previous week. But essentially, when I first started teaching, I was barely 21 at the time. I think I was 21 for like 2 months at the time. And I was worried that districts would not hire me because I was so young. But instead of using that as a deterrent, I used that as the reason why districts should hire me. I came up with all the reasons why districts should hire me because I'm so new. And I used that throughout my interview. I reminded them that because I'm so new, I'm a quick learner. I'm looking for a district that I want to work at long term. I have this outside experience that would be a great asset to their district and will help them achieve their goals. So that's the next area I focus on more than student letters of recommendation. The final area that I recommend focusing on when it comes to coming up with a solution other than student letters of recommendation is utilizing the district's mission statement. Look, the last thing your district wants, is to get a copy, repeat, rinse, and repeat interview. That just doesn't feel genuine, and it's less likely that they're going to feel a connection with you. Whereas if you do your research ahead of time and you come up with the district's mission statement and values, and you think, oh my goodness, we have these two values aligned, we both believe in these two things. So I'm going to make sure to incorporate that into my interview so I can show how much alike I'm going to be to this district and how I can help them achieve their goals of that mission and that values. Now, what I'm not saying is to pick, say that you align with all the values when you don't, because you also want to find a district that you feel aligned with and you're going to work well with. And so you don't want to just say the nice things to get the job because in the long run, that's not going to serve you long term. But finding districts that you're genuinely aligned to and showing that passion in your interview is going to help it feel more natural and they're going to pick up on your passion for that thing. And it's going to feel like a more genuine fit and mutual agreement between the two of you and benefit for the both of you. As I've said in the past, interviewing is nothing more than having a really good conversation with a friend over coffee and getting to know each other. That's the same thing of an interview. An interview is not only them finding out if you are going to be a good match for them, but you also want to find out if they're going to be a good match for you, and they're going to be a district that you're going to want to work in long term. So using these 4 different areas that I talked about is really going to help you get more bang for your buck when it comes to interviewing, as opposed to utilizing student recommendation letters. Now, the 4 areas I recommend using instead of student recommendation letters are student data. Think of some specific data you can use in your interview, in your portfolio, such as that, so that your district can see that you're not only academically knowledgeable, but you also have the skills in the classroom. Second thing is student stories. Not only student stories, but stories in general. Come up with a bank of stories that you can use throughout your interview process to further explain your answers and to feel less likely like you're going to ramble on, to have specific things you can refer to later. The third thing you're going to want to focus on is your it factor. What makes you stand out from other teachers and makes the district want to hire you over others? The fourth thing is your mission statement. What is the district's mission statement, and which values and which pieces of it are you aligned to, and how can you incorporate that throughout your interview? So that wraps up what I personally feel about student letters of recommendation and why I personally don't use them and what I use instead. If you want to dive in deeper, I would love to have you check out the Ultimate Teacher Interview Guide. I show you how to confidently prepare for your interview in a single weekend. The second thing I have for you is the Ultimate Interview Templates. I created a bunch of templates and I put them together to make interviewing easier for you. Not only do I have a breakdown of what your resume and your cover letter should have, and I give you examples and prompts and even a sample resume on what a good resume and cover letter looks like. I have 10 different variations of that, but I also have other prompts in there and other templates such as follow-up emails, letters of recommendation, asking for letters of recommendation, stuff like that. So definitely check that out if you want me to help you come up with wording when it comes to your interview process. The final area I have for you, if you want to take it a step further, is I created a program that talks about everything you need to know about preparing for your upcoming interview. We talk about not only how to prepare, but what to do during the interview, what to do the day before, how to teach a mini lesson, how to follow up, and how to get better and better and use the data and stuff that you've accumulated throughout the interview process to get better and better each time, and to reuse it if you ever want to transfer districts in the future. So, with all that being said, thank you so much for joining me. I would really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. That way you can get notified when upcoming content comes up in the upcoming weeks. And make sure to share this channel or this content. I would really appreciate it so we can reach more teachers that may find this information useful. As always, remember, we are stronger together. Good luck on your interview, and I'll talk to you soon, teacher bestie. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I hope that you were able to take away some value that will help you thrive inside and out of the classroom. It would mean the world to me if you could take 5 seconds right now and leave a review on this podcast. And if you found this podcast especially helpful, make sure to take a screenshot of this episode right now and tag me on your socials to let me know you're listening. As always, remember that we are stronger together. With all the love in the world, Helena, aka the Present Teacher. See you next time, teacher bestie.